Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan here with a screenwriter's take on Don't Look Up. Yeah, I watched it, 99% of it. And let me tell you something, terrible movie. But let's get into it. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Check out my books. The links are in the description. Comedy Horror in South Jersey. It's the Pineys. And it's available at Amazon.com. Kindle Unlimited is free. This is a terrible movie. It is too long. I'm going to start with my non-spoiler review. It is too damn long. This is supposed to be a political satire. Any comedy should be tight. Tight as F. This should have been a tight 90. A tight 90. And I could cut 40 minutes out of this. No problem. It's 2 hours and 18 minutes. 2 hours and 18 minutes. There is no way this thing should be over 2 hours. And it luxuriates in many different scenes that are totally unnecessary. And this is a shame because it's a really good cast. I mean, Jennifer Lawrence, Leonardo DiCaprio, Meryl Streep, Jonah Hill, big names. But Adam McKay barely gives them anything to do. Now, the story was by David Sirota, who, I guess, came up with this pitch. And it's not a bad pitch. You know, that a meteor's coming and the government can't get out of its own way to stop it. But the execution here is just completely the opposite. It hits the ground running. And initially, when I started watching this, I thought, "Oh, this is gonna be halfway decent," because John Nolte over at Breitbart gave it a fairly okay review. Said it wasn't that hard on Trump supporters. Let me greatly disagree. This is a very political movie, a very political one. It's just that the way McKay slips in the politics, he kind of changes things around, so you're not quite sure who you're looking at. Because the easy thing to do is to look at a female character like Meryl Streep as the president and say, well, this is probably Hillary Clinton. It's not. Take a good look at her. All right? Take a good look at the shape of her head, the shape of her glasses. You know who that is? Think about that for a minute. First off, she's in red. That's a Republican color. Right? Look at those glasses. That's Lauren Boebert. Yup, that's who she's modeled after. Not Hillary Clinton, Lauren Boebert. Now, there's a shot of her in pictures of various famous people, including Bill Clinton. So it'd be easy to say, oh, man, it's supposed to be Hillary Clinton or somebody who's associated with the Clintons. No. Nah. The message is there. This is Lauren Boebert. That's who it is. And and let me tell you something. That's the least problem with this movie. But anyhow, the movie hits the ground running and then almost grinds to a halt almost immediately as the characters get stymied again and again and again trying to tell people about the comet coming. Now, again, the pitch is solid. You know, the idea of the government being unable to get out of its own way makes sense. But the hilarious scenarios where the government can't get out of their own way are so ridiculous, and it's so obvious to me that they're making fun of Republicans and what hypocrites they are. They just don't bother to go after Democrats. They really don't. They try to generalize it, but in the end, you know who the supporters are. You know who the party is. That's the problem. That there are adults in the room trying to valiantly tell people, oh my God, the comet's coming and we've got to stop it. And it's also a message of anti-capitalism, because the quote real villain of the story is a tech giant guy who makes cell phones, who's the one who screws everything up. But he's not really based on anybody, you know? He's just a weird character, and he's not even particularly that funny. He would have been a lot funnier had they based him on Mark Zuckerberg or maybe Jack Dorsey. But he's just kind of his own deal. And I get that he is a factor in this, but the way he's presented is, in my view, totally unrealistic. I didn't buy it for a second. This movie is a little too cutesy, a little too full of itself, and it spends way too much time on Leonardo DiCaprio. I mean, he's the main character, and his character arc is the one we follow, but we didn't need to spend tens of minutes on his affair. He has an affair with a woman in the movie, and it's like, spoilers. I don't think I'm giving anything away. But, you know, it has almost nothing to do with the lesson at hand. Yeah, I guess he represents how people can get caught up in things, but the comet's coming and it's going to kill everybody. It's basically the plot of that Simpsons episode when Bart discovers the comet and everybody's worried that Springfield's going to be wiped off the map. And really, no one cares. No one cares that they're all going to die. I just don't believe that. You know, in Dr. Strangelove, people did care that they were going to die. Yes, they were stupid and they ended up doing things that, you know, facilitated World War III, essentially. But the way it rolled out in Dr. Strangelove made sense within the confines of the characters, because they were taking already established tropes and extenuating them. Here, we don't have that. Now, let me get into some real spoilers. There's Jonah Hill. So that concludes my non-spoiler review. The movie's too long. It's terrible. I was literally clicking the 10-second advance button through most of the third act. I couldn't sit through it. It was boring. So, let me get into the spoilers. So the first act is the comet's coming. Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence they're trying to tell everybody. They get to the president relatively quickly, but she doesn't want to listen. She's too concerned with politics. Second act, Leo gets caught up in being a TV star, lets the White House sort of talk him into their plan, but their plan gets aborted because the tech giant guy decides, hey, there's $140 trillion worth of metals in the meteor that we could mine. So instead of saving the planet, we're going to attempt to break apart the meteor and bring the pieces down gently. And then the third act, they're trying to convince other countries to do what the United States should do. And in the end, the other countries can't do it. The plan, the tech giant goes horribly wrong, and they have to go to their backup plan, which is escaping the Earth, which was the most unrealistic ending possible. I think it would have been a more funny ending had they realized they effed themselves and then they just sort of kill each other. To me, the ending on the after credit sequence on the alien planet, I mean, by that point I was so sick of the movie. It was too damn long, Had it been a tight 90, that scene would have been kind of funny, I guess, but... And really, they should have all died at the end. They should have all gotten to that alien planet, and then they should have all been brutally murdered. But Adam McKay, he's funny circa 1992, maybe. Maybe this movie would have been hilarious then, but it's just not that outrageous. You know, they have a scene where there's a sex scandal between the president and one of her nominees, that she sent him a picture of her privates. that completely came off as just a throwaway line. Didn't come off as funny. I didn't believe it for a second. Jonah Hill tries his best, but he can only do so much. Leonardo's great in the movie. His beard seems to get longer and shorter at various times. I'm not exactly sure why. But there's way too much focus on him. Really, this movie shouldn't have a focus on characters. It's supposed to be about the bigger picture. There's a lot of focus on Jennifer Lawrence, too, and her character arc. It's not that it's bad. It's just that that's the wrong focus. You know, I wrote Wokistan, a novel with Christian, and Hollywoke, another novel. And yes, there are character arcs that you have to be concerned with in a satire, but the bigger picture is the focus of a satire. And I felt that during the course of this movie, that was very secondary. That was almost like, oh yeah, we gotta come up with a thing for the meteor or whatever. I mean, the meteor goes out of the picture for half the movie. And here's the big problem. It is hyper focused on making fun of Republicans and not making fun of Democrats. The Democrats, now imagine two scenarios. Imagine a world in which Donald Trump had to face a meteor heading towards Earth. Do you have any doubt that Trump would stop it? He'd probably spend too much money, and he'd probably talk on and on how he saved the Earth. But I have no doubt that Trump would use the Space Force and he would stop the meteor, because nothing would stop Donald Trump. Trump isn't a politician first. He was a businessman first. And he defied the media and politics all the time. All the time. Now, imagine Biden right now facing the meteor coming to Earth. You can totally see him screwing that up, because Biden does things based on poll numbers, and his poll numbers suck. He doesn't have anything else other than his political career. That's all he is politics. So you could see how Biden could screw this up. In fact, a Biden as the president would have been hilarious, because Biden would have been a shaky old man as president who couldn't deal with the comet coming down, and it would be about all his underlings around them in the swamp, in the DC swamp, screwing everything up because they're greedy. Now, in the movie, the tech giant basically puts a halt to the first attempt to destroy the meteor, literally when it's happening, which made zero sense. It was too far along. It should have stopped before then, but you know, they're trying to do this satire. It just didn't work for me. So you think Trump would have stopped that? No, not even for the money. Because a guy like Trump would have wanted the prestige of saving the Earth. Biden probably would too, if he was in his right mind. But you could see Biden screwing it up. You could see Biden's advisors giving him bad information. You could see Trump's guys giving him bad information too, but Trump ignoring them. That's the difference. Trump ignored his advisors all the time and made decisions over their head. Not Biden. That's not the way Biden worked. So imagine a character like Biden as the president, old and feeble, being pushed every which way by his advisors, being like barely cognizant, his wife having to do part of the work. Yeah, you could totally see that working. Instead, McKay goes for this MAGA hat analogy where 2/3 into the movie, and this is long into the movie, excuse me, where the scientists are trying to convince people of the danger of the meteor, and it's now visible to Earth, and they're saying, look up, just look up, and that becomes the hashtag or whatever. Well, Meryl Streep's character decides, no, we're going to tell people don't look up, and it becomes a whole MAGA hat thing. And there's an actual scene where they cut to a MAGA hat wearer, because the hats are red. Again, Trump supporters. And he looks up in the sky and sees the meteor and goes, oh, they lied to us. They also tie it into like freedom. Oh, the freedom. I need my freedom. And they've got right-wing talk show guys who are just stupid and are ignoring the meteor. You got it backwards. The tech giants would have supported the Democrats. McKay. That's way it should have been. This should have been. It should have been the Democrats. That would have been the funniest movie. You could also have the wokeness in there too. You know, that the Biden admin is so woke. They have a bunch of woke hires that are incompetent. Oh, but that would be way too edgy for Hollywood. And in fact, McKay puts in Hollywood on the side of the scientist. Right? Oh, Hollywood comes out and says, just look up, because Hollywood is so on point with science, right? Yeah, right. Please, Hollywood should have been complicit in everything in this movie. It should have been a Biden-like president screwing the whole thing up, Hollywood going along, the media going along with it. And it should have been pushed to a ridiculous extreme. Same thing with the New York Times. Even the New York Times, which is portrayed as kind of cynical, not cynical enough. No way. Those commies needed to be lambasted. They needed to be crushed. I tried to do it in Wokistan, a novel. We have a newspaper that's supposed to be like the New York Times, and Dr. Mondale has a friend who works there, begs him to send a reporter to report on what's happening at the college, and the reporter absolutely screws him. Absolutely screws him. Completely lies. Doesn't even talk to him. That's what we needed. We needed a scene like that, where these reporters just outright lie. Oh no, they don't lie. They look at the statistics for the story and whether or not they can get enough hits, and then they make a decision based on that. No. That's not the way they operate. That's part of the way they operate, but they also do it for politics. McKay drops the ball. It's as simple as that. And because of that, there's no weight in this. There's no truth in it. It's another attempt to contort things in this worldview that only Republicans do bad things in politics. Only Republicans do. Not Democrats. No. Democrats are wonderful people who know science. So they would have been all for just doing the right thing. See, it's not specifically stated, but it's implied. heavily implied, because there is no other opposition in this world. Streep is clearly a Republican. Clearly. She's wearing red. She looks like Lauren Boebert, and her fans are MAGA hat wearers. Clearly, she's Republican. There is almost no mention of the Democrats. Not even to be in opposition like, hey, you're not doing the right thing. They're barely mentioned. There's kind of some other characters, but you don't really get a sense of who they are at all. The politics in this is just, ha ha ha, dopey Republicans don't respect science, bunch of dummies. Oh, and a few of the Democrat, media organizations, well, they're a little too caught up in media stuff. But they are really not to be blamed, are they? Yeah. Yeah, it's like when Leo in the movie says, what good is all the money if we're all going to die? And the idea that the tech giant would have this escape plan, well, we're going to try to mine the meteor, and if it all goes wrong, well, we'll just all escape the Earth and abandon it forever. No. No one would agree to that plan. That's why that particular ending is dumb. And not funny at all. No one would agree to that plan. They just don't, number one, they don't have the technology, so that takes it out of the realm of, reality. If they had this plan to blow up the meteor and take it down in pieces, and the plan went awry, they needed a further backup plan to blow it up. They absolutely needed one. Instead, they hinge all their things on that last plan. And they wait until the meteor's headed towards Earth before they start splitting the thing up. Why not attempt the plan far away from Earth, and then, if it doesn't work, blow the damn thing up with the first plan? You have to play characters at the height of their intelligence. And the only one who's sort of playing at the height of his intelligence is Leo. And to some extent, Jennifer Lawrence. And there's a running gag in the movie that Jennifer Lawrence, God bless her, I mean, she's trying to make work, but it's just not that funny. And the gag goes like this. A general brings the group snacks early on in a movie and charges them $10, and then they find out later they're free, and she's absolutely obsessed over why he charged them. It's just not funny. There's no final thing. She keeps mentioning it. There's no final thing where she confronts him or anything. That's what needed to happen for that bit to pay off. But it just never does. So, this movie suffers from the lack of reality. It needed to be anchored in a real reality where Republicans and Democrats go at each other all the time. And it needed to start with a Democratic president, because only a Democrat would have bowed down and aborted the plan for big tech. A Republican never would have done that. It's as simple as that. McKay knows this. McKay absolutely knows this. So you could have made it work with a Democrat, and you could have lambasted your own side, and you would have been a hero. You would have been a hero for doing it, because people would have looked at that and say, yeah, here's a guy who will at least go after his own side. But you know what? He never would have gotten this movie greenlit in Hollywood. There's no way. Because, and Ariana Grande's in it for no damn reason. There's maybe one scene which she's required. The rest of it is like they let her sing an entire song. That's part of the 40 minutes I would have cut out of this movie. That was part of the 40 minutes I was zooming through. Ron Perlman is wasted. Most of the cast is wasted. Jonah Hill tries. He tries to make it work. But ultimately, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It's just not funny. And I don't say that because they make fun of Trump supporters. There'd be a way to make fun of Trump supporters, but you'd have to anchor it in truth. And you kind of try to do that, but without the other side, by a completely... You can't put in MAGA and not put in Black Lives Matter. You just can't. That is completely leaving out like 80% of the story. Why not have Black Lives Matter? Why not have Black Lives Matter screaming that the comet is racist? That would have been hilarious. MSNBC going on and on about how people of color, they need to build bunkers first because they're the ones who need to be saved or something. That would have been amazing. But again, that just doesn't exist in Adam McKay's world and David Sirota's world. Oh, no. Yeah, we don't have to mention that. Oh, those horrible Republicans, they're so racist. They're so racist, but yeah, we don't need to mention that. We don't need to mention that ridiculous assertion that would inevitably be mentioned if this actually happened. If a comet happened, I guarantee you someone at MSNBC would say something about how the comet is racist. Guaranteed. Absolutely guaranteed. And you're telling me an extinction level event, these people would be so incompetent as to let the planet die. No, what we needed was a storyline in which they do the smart thing, but it goes wrong. It goes wrong for money or greed or whatever. Because they rely on the cell phone guy's technology, maybe, although that's partly what happens. Something goes wrong that's very unexpected. But everything in this movie is 100% expected. Republicans bad. Democrats don't exist. Only Republicans do bad things. You can assume that everybody else is a Democrat because they respect the science. It just infuriates me because Adam McKay is a funny guy. But David Sirota is not. David Sirota is on the left. So you can't be partisan and not do both. Okay? Part of the reason we wrote Wokistan is to show how left colleges had become. And there are lines in the novel where characters are like, oh, well, what about the Republicans? They're the ones obviously causing the problem. And Mondale keeps saying, what are you talking about? I work at a college. There are no Republicans there. There just aren't any. The Republicans just don't exist in the faculty. There's just none to be found in a liberal arts college in upstate New York. You'd be lucky to find one somewhere, and he would keep his head low. So, that's the reality of college. That's the reality of Hollywoke. In Hollywoke, another novel, same thing. Everybody's on the left. Everybody. There's just a handful of people, and they're marginalized. Their careers are barely hanging on. And it's not that they're Republican and super right wing, it's just that they're not super lefty, or they've been canceled, or they're comedians. This doesn't marginalize Republicans. It proposes that, oh, the Republicans, they're in charge and they're going to screw this all up. Democrats, they're nowhere to be seen. It's like, how could they be nowhere, David Sirota? How could they not have any responsibility in this? Zero. You're telling me that the Democrats, who control essentially 99% of the major media content, won't get the message across that the planet's going to die? The climate changers, they're not going to want to tell people that the planet's going to die? I mean, at the very least, you could have framed it that way. That, you know, that the Republicans say, well, you know, this is more climate change BS. That would have worked. See, you're extending what already exists. That's satire. You're exaggerating what already exists. This doesn't do that. This creates a world out of whole cloth that doesn't exist. Part of it exists, but it's like Democrats have been, they're removed. No. We're showing bad government. We don't want to show any Democrats. This movie, don't say it. Don't look up. Don't see it, would be my advice. It's a waste of your time. It's a waste of your time. And I for one, am shocked that John Nolte says this is not as good, you know, not as hard against the Trumpers. I think this is very hard against Trumpers. And, you know, he had this line that even Trump would have greenlit a movie like this because it's about the dysfunction of government. It is, but only when Republicans run it. And that's it for me, Tony D. I'm just so mad at this movie. We'll see you in the next one.